The House of Kuru, Part 2, Chapter 36. The Trip to Panchala. The sons of Pandu, with their mother, got up early the next morning and bathed themselves in the lake of Utkochaka. They then followed the Brahmanas to the city of Panchala, while maintaining the rules of being poor lowly Brahmanas, members of the priestly class who were looking for work and hoping to get some gifts or donations from the rich kings and attendants of the Swayamvara of Panchali. The Pandavas, along with their mother, walked across lakes and mountains and stopped to admire the views on occasions. The trek to the city of Panchala was long and arduous, causing the son of Vayu, the wind god, Bhimasena, to lift their mother on his shoulders to continue the march. In time, the Pandavas reached the walled city of Panchala along with their mother, and they were stunned by its magnificence. The last time they approached this city, they were armed and ready for combat, with their eldest brother waiting on the edge of the city to simply observe. Yet today they have arrived wearing nothing but simple clothing, disguised as members of the priestly class. The city was adorned from the top to bottom, and crowds of people rushed everywhere hither and thither. The sons of Pandu were awestruck by the magnificence and beauty of the city. There were flowers and decorations all over the city. There were bards and minstrels who were singing the greatness of the king of Panchala and his beautiful daughter. The festivities were to last for 14 days, and on the 15th day, the contest would commence. The king of Panchala had built several palaces to ensure that all the royal guests and participants were well accommodated. There were many attractive sights and festivities for all the attendants. Competitive sports and various public entertainment had been arranged to keep all the potential suitors occupied and enthusiastic. The Pandavas made their way to the marriage hall to see that it had been meticulously decorated with a golden fountain in the center of the hall, as it was sprinkling sweet-tasting water. At the end of the marriage hall was a large steel bow, about 4 cubits in length, placed on top of a large altar. The second Arjuna saw the bow, his hands began to tremble slightly, and both Kunti and Yudhishthira observed this. Despite the show, however, no one could guess what the task ahead was to win the hand of the maiden Panchali. They then made their way to the outskirts of the city and found residence in the house of a potter. They attended each of the 14-day festivities in the guise of poor, helpless Brahmanas looking for alms and donations from the wealthier kings. The sons of Pandu looked so completely different from their departure from Hastinapura that no one in the world, let alone Suyodhana and his band of brothers, could recognize them. Their beards were so overgrown that it looked like they were all sages in disguise. As each day passed, more and more participants, servants, kings and princes arrived at the city gates and were given warm welcomes and taken to their respective chambers. As the days continued to turn, the festivities got even more lavish and outlandish, with exquisite food being served to the new arrivals, and on the final day of the Swayamvara, the celestials arrived. First, the 11 Rudras, then the 12 Adityas, closely followed by the 8 Vasus, and finally the Ashwini twins themselves, which made 33 celestials. After the celestials came the chief of the Maruts, and then Kubera, the guardian of wealth, who was led by Yama, the god of death, on his famed buffalo. There also came the great celestial rishis who were seers of the holy Vedas, the Guhyakas, and the great sage Narada was also present. Then arrived several Gandharvas with Apsaras. And finally, Halayuda, also known as Balarama, and Janardhana, also known as Lord Krishna, the chief of the Vrishni and the Yadava tribes, arrived with their tribesmen. All the celestials were given grandiose seats in the amphitheater and were treated with tremendous respect. As soon as Janardhana saw the 5 men disguised as Brahmanas, he saw right through their disguise and told his brother Valadeva or Balarama, "This man is Yudhishthira. He is the foremost of men, possessed of virtue and humility. That man is none other than Bhimasena. He is a one-man army." And on the other side, the other man with a slightly longer beard is Jishnu, also known as Arjuna, and their twin step-brothers, Sahadeva and Nakula, said Janardhana. And Balarama nodded with satisfaction. "So the rumor is true then. They escaped the fire from the poorly constructed house of wax," nodded Balarama, and Janardhana nodded slowly, keeping a keen eye on the 5 men. Fortunately for the Pandavas, neither Janardhana or Valadeva revealed their secret, as the rest of the men were obsessed with Panchali, the princess of Panchala. The kings from all over Bharatavarsha were present in the amphitheater. Great kings like Dhamagosha, Sishupala, and Jarasandha were present. The sons of Dhritarashtra too were present in the marriage hall. Finally, a group of Brahmanas, members of the priestly class, arrived and sat next to a large steel bow and began uttering holy spells and mantras and incantations to worship and bless the bow. Just as they were chanting, a loud horse was heard neighing, and the entire crowd turned their heads to see Drishtadhyumna riding on a fine black stallion, and right behind him was a large crowd of chamber ladies as they threw rose petals on the floor, and the sound of beating kettle drums reverberated throughout the amphitheater. Seated on a large grey elephant, just after her auspicious bridal bath, clad in flowing silken clothing, Princess Panchali arrived in extravagant grandeur. The second she arrived, everyone noticed the obvious scent of blue lotus wafting through the entire amphitheater. The elephant skillfully bent its 4 hind legs, and Drishtadhyumna helped his princess sister dismount the pachyderm. With each step she took, all the men, and even some celestials, were smitten by her beauty. Her gait and elegance was that of a seasoned princess. Fathers, brothers, sons, cousins became jealous of one another as she glanced coyly at each of the assembled king or prince holding a large garland in her hands. The god of love, Kama, was having a field day, as each male in the room had envied looks on their faces. As each of the prince or king had a mixture of desire and speechless admiration etched on their faces, Panchali walked towards her seat in the center of the amphitheater as Brahmanas repeated the usual mantras and incantation for the princess's welfare and prosperity. So, this was the princess of Panchala. If she was this beautiful and this desired, then why was King Drupada insistent on her marriage to the Pandava Arjuna? Surely he could have picked any king in the land, and that king would have happily entered a marriage with Panchali. Clear this doubt from me immediately, O Rajaguru Vaishampayana. asked the king Janamejaya. Dear king, though Drupada and Guru Drona were outwardly at peace, the former could never forget or forgive the humiliation he had suffered at the latter's hands. The reason Drupada's one wish was to give his daughter to Arjuna's hand was so that in the event of a war, he would be nearly invincible. Do not underestimate Drupada, O king. He was a powerful Atiratha, and no ordinary king could even match him, let alone defeat him. Yet the two sons of Pandu defeated him and his army single-handedly. Since that day, King Drupada was desperate to have Arjuna and only Arjuna as his son-in-law. Convinced that if one day a war does break out, then his allegiance to Arjuna would make him invincible on the battlefield. This is another kingly secret, your majesty, to strengthen your kingdom through marital bonds, finished Vaishampayana. Wow, what a tactic! Now tell me, how is the contest of kings conducted? How did my great-grandfather win Panchali's hands? Asked Janamejaya. The next day, my lord, the next day, said Vaishampayana, as Janamejaya had a look of impatience etched on his face.
I hope you liked today's episode of The House of Kuru. If you have not already, please subscribe to this channel and like this video so that you will be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thank you.